Okay, what is up? Here we are with the LLaMa model. I'm going to just go ahead and show you how to get it installed. It is a little bit complicated, I think on purpose, because they probably just want you to wait for the weights to come in. Instead, we got the weights from Technium. It was about 220 gigabytes. I'm currently seeding right now. We got the weights here. It's formatted really nicely. They didn't do any nonsense with the weights. We get each model type, 7 billion to 65 billion parameters. We get the token model file and the tokenizer checklist. So that part's easy. The hard part was waiting for it to install. It took about 5 hours, I would say, which is kind of a pain in the booty. So let's get started with creating the Conda environment, downloading the repo, installing the dependencies, and editing things so that it'll work with the weights instead of downloading the weights from a verification link or whatever they want you to do. Yeah, they give you a link and it's in this download sh file. All this file seems to do is create a folder to put everything, allow you to specify which models you want, and download the tokenizer and weights. You need this URL to do this properly though. The example.py file is gonna be what we're running here. It has a couple prompts. It's not like ChatGPT in terms of what kind of prompts you're doing. It's more like GPT-3, and then it's doing continuations instead of more conversation. You can probably have a conversation with it, but it's more focused on continuation. So your prompt would be, I believe the meaning of life is, instead of what is the meaning of life. And I think they go into detail about that somewhere in here. Maybe somewhere in here they explain that. So GPT-3 like instead of ChatGPT like. Heroes will obviously be training this and making it work to be more conversational, I would imagine, now that these weights have been released, and I was able to download them about 2 days late, so they're still available. All right, let's actually get started. All right, so here we are. Got the weights from Technium. It's a magnet link. We used qbittorrent on Ubuntu, bittorrent, utorrent, all of those will work fine. I'm seeding right now. Actually, I'm not seeding right now, but I'll start seeding again, so there'll definitely be at least one seeder. I got pretty good internet connection. I was getting down speeds of about 7.5 megabits per second, which is horrendous. 219 gigabytes. It took about 5 hours. So that's what you're dealing with. It's 220 gigabytes. Okay, we have the repo here, the Facebook LLaMa repo. In the requirements, I'm going to change this to specify torch equals 1.3 plus cu 17, I think, 117, just to make sure that it installs the most recent, or at least a recent version of torch. I was having issues with that. But before we get started with any of that, this is not necessarily necessary to be the first step you do, but it's good to do it just so you don't forget. Let's create an environment. Conda create -n, and we're going to call it LLaMa. Go ahead and hit enter. There we go. Hit yes, and we're going to activate. And there we go. All right, activated. All right, so we got the environment activated. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to start seeding again. There's been a catastrophic error of epic proportions that would make reseeding impossible. But we got the environment activated. We're going to go ahead and clone this repo. And again, I'm going to change the requirements.txt file a little bit, and I'm going to not use the pip install e, but I'll show you that the pip install e might not work on yours and what to do about that if that is the case. So we got that. Git clone, Control Shift V. There we go. It's cloned in. All right, I actually want it in my models folder, so I'm just going to mv LLaMa into models, and then we'll cd into models, and we will cd into LLaMa. I probably could have done that in one line, but I chose not to. And now we will do the pip. Actually, we will go ahead and open this up in VS Code. Yeah, I'm a loser. I use VS Code. Just forgive me, okay? And then we'll open up the requirements.txt, and we'll go ahead and change this with this here. It's torch equals 1.13.1. That's the most recent, I think, on pytorch.org. So that's the most recent stable. I stick with the stable, the most recent one. It's good enough for me. We're going to make sure that it actually installs that instead of trying to do something else. So we're going to keep it like that. Control S, and we should be good to go running this here. No reason to type all that out. Okay, could not find a version that satisfies the requirement. Right, I shouldn't have added the plus. That should just be implied, I think, hopefully. So we'll go ahead and minimize that, and there we go. Okay, so, and we did install 6, so it looks like we're looking good here. Okay, so we got those requirements installed. Let's go ahead and just show you that. I mean, maybe it will work, things are always changing here, but pip install e should not work. Okay, so it did work before, it didn't. And if it didn't work before, just go ahead and do sudo python setup.py develop, and that should be fine. Or you could do sudo pip install e. Not recommended because that's going to globally, I wouldn't actually, either way, it's really not ideal to use the sudo to do this. So I'm not sure why this worked, but it did. Hallelujah. All right, and torch run is working, so everything is going smoothly. And in truth, I did do this install before, and torch run wasn't working, the pip install e wasn't working. And I think that all comes down to specifying the torch version, and not just specifying the torch version, which is what I did, but I would recommend, and this happens every single time I do a model install. They never specify the package version, the module version. And if you want to be a real pro about it, I would specify the version for every single one, and that'll save you a lot of headaches before you even start. Every time this happens, if you watch my videos, you'll see the same crap. I forget every time, but I would make sure you do that. Set the version and go from there. So now that we have everything running and looking good, what we're going to do is we're going to just copy and paste the target folder, copy and paste the tokenizer. We'll go ahead and run the example.py, and it should be good to go. All right, we're running smooth. It's quick. Using the 7 billion parameter model, 10.8 seconds. And you got to get, I think it may be another 2 or 3 seconds to get started. But 10.8 seconds is what it said. It had a bunch of, this is the example.py file. There's a bunch of prompts that it goes through, and they're all pretty good. I put it through GPT-0, and it came with a perplexity score of about 20 and 12. ChatGPT was doing about 38 for perplexity and 15 for burstiness. This, as I said, was 20 for perplexity and 12 for burstiness. U.com was doing 22 for perplexity and 13 for burstiness, so it's in the same vein as U.com for the 7 billion, but we got a 64 billion parameter model. I'm not sure if they're parameters. I'm not really sure if the B even stands for billion, but we have a much larger one that we'll definitely test out. And all we had to do was for the n proc per node, I set it to 1. That's for the amount of GPUs I want to use, which is just 1. And in the example.py file, we definitely want to change a couple things, and I'll show that next. All right, so just one thing I noticed, the prompt here is a few shot prompt where we're trying to get it to translate from English to French, and this is what was entered. It came up with the correct word, cheese, fromage, then it added this entire thing here, which is underlined item. It adds this whole thing here. This was generated, and it came with some HTML and some PHP, which should run. So I'll go ahead and run this and see if we can see that. This looks good. This looks like good. I mean, obviously it doesn't have it's a partial HTML file, but it looks pretty good. And then it said that it preferred to be in this form. I'm trying to teach my students a bit about HTML and PHP. I'm not sure what that is, but it just threw that in there. So that's pretty interesting, what's coming up with what it's generating. This is GPT-3 doesn't get this random. I'm not sure what the temperature is, or if they're even using a temperature is kind of a parameter for how random the output should be. So I'm not sure where that setting is, but we'll look for it. And here I just set up the boilerplate and ran it, and the form was made successfully, which I saw. I could tell you that. And the PHP, it didn't. There's some issues here. I'd have to brush up on my PHP. Obviously there's no back end, so I wasn't expecting it to actually translate, but it looks like there's something going on right here. This shouldn't be, not sure why it's screwing up like that, but it didn't work fully, but it came up with some partially valid code. That's partial credit for sure. All right, so I think it's helpful to add these couple lines of code to anything that's using CUDA just to see what device information it has available. Print the device info, then we print the local rank, print the world size, and print the device that it ends up choosing. Here we can see that local rank is 0, world size is 1, and the index for world size I believe starts at 1, so it looks like it's only recognizing 1 GPU right now, which is fine for us, but maybe moving forward we want to we want to figure something out about that. I've had a ton of trouble with parallel GPU usage with the 3060 and 3090 together. I'm not sure if it'd be any better if they were the same GPU. Probably would be. And then we're using the 3090. So it's good to just see that so you know what's going on when you run. And that should be it. We're also going to try and take a look at shrinking this down so we can run with less VRAM. People seem to like that. So I'll do a low VRAM setting video, if not in this one, in the next one. I think we might just try the 4 different models, see if the outputs are any different. Seems that the outputs are the same. For the same model, the output doesn't seem to change. I got the same thing here. All right, so we're just gonna stick with the 7B model in this video. The 13B model looks like it's a little bit too huge. What I'm seeing here is I was able to reduce VRAM pretty significantly by about 6 gigabytes, but the way that it seems to be working is one GPU is handling the data and the other is handling the model. I'm not sure what the data is in this context because it's not training anything, but it's mixing information on the same GPU is a little bit complicated. So instead of, even though there is free space on one GPU and no free space on the other, it's very hard to send parts of the data on one GPU to another if they're both doing different things. So I'm thinking the easiest way is going to be figuring out how to play with these matrices or maybe play with something else in here to get the 3060 to be using less VRAM. All right, but how did I reduce this from 20 to 14? I will show you. Okay, so without changing anything, we're using about 22 gigabytes of VRAM. But if we go to the example.py file and scroll down to where the model args are defined, we can change the batch size. You can drop it down to 8, you can drop it down to 16. Really, this runs so quickly, it doesn't really matter. And changing the batch size is just changing how the data gets passed through the model. So it really shouldn't affect accuracy or anything like that. Okay, so the minimum batch size, max batch size is 5. There's an assertion where it checks that it is 5 or greater. So unfortunately, just using this, you're gonna get 15.5 gigabytes of VRAM, which is higher than what the 3060 has. It's less than what the Intel has, but to use the Intel with this, you're gonna have to change this entire code. You're gonna have to import the Intel extension. You're gonna have to change the model definitions to work with Intel. All these torch CUDAs you're gonna have to change to whatever Intel's using, so it's gonna be a little bit of a headache, but if that's all you have, you probably could make it work. If you have two 3060s, unfortunately this is not set up to be effective at splitting up the data in a way that makes sense if the world size is just 1 for the 7B, so you might be able to get that to work. But if you have a 3090 and you're also using it for graphic, visual display, you're using it for other processes, you can get it down to 15 and a half gigabytes from normally it's at 22, and we can see 22 gigabytes, you can save about 7 gigabytes of VRAM. That's the simplest solution. Okay, so changing the max sequence length is also going to drop the VRAM slightly, but that's also going to affect the output. So the batch size won't affect the output. Changing the sequence length is going to affect the output. So if you want to do that, you can. You could probably drop this down even lower, but now we're going to get worse outputs. So you might want to start playing with the temperature a little bit, maybe dropping the temperature, maybe also dropping the top P, maybe actually increasing the top P, dropping the temperature. That's going to give it a more uniform output, less random. If you want a more random, up the temperature and drop the top P. So let's see what we get when we do that down to 128. Okay, now we're playing. We're still at 14, which is higher than anything useful. We want to ideally get this down to 10. We get this down to 10, you can run this on the 3060. We get this down to 11, you can run it on the 3060. But that's 3 gigabytes. That's a lot of stuff to get rid of. That's going to drastically affect the outputs here. And you can see dropping it down to 128, we lost all the PHP that it was doing here. So before we were getting a lot more. We go down to 256, get less, go down to 128, significantly less. So I'm gonna leave it at that for now. These settings here are gonna be the easiest things you can play with to reduce your VRAM, and you could probably drop the max gen here as well. Give that a shot. But it is possible. And I will be posting another video that actually comes up with a better solution for this.